We've been listening to the evidence this afternoon of Jenny, who was another person who had a much shorter than Bea, but a sexual relationship with Trevor Morris, HN78. She would give quite a powerful testimony. Her voice was modulated, which kind of made it a bit difficult to follow, so I'm not sure if people followed it or not, but I think for those of us who were really tuned into it, it was impossible to avoid the emotion that came across through her questioning. I'm joined with Donal and Eveline Lubbers from the Undercover Research Group. What did you make of this afternoon's questioning?
It was pretty intense. It came across really clearly how much it impacted on her, and she just really expressed it in succinct, beautiful terms. It's like beautiful, but it was you could feel the pain coming through, and she was not just the impact on her, which has been significant, but just the knowledge of that generally for all the women. It was difficult to listen to.
Yeah, and she had like a sort of intimate friendship with him, which wasn't like didn't turn into a sexual relationship until kind of the last night before he disappeared. She bumped into him, and they caught up because they hadn't seen each other for quite some time, and then he kind of asked her to join him to his bedsit, which was already empty, but for I don't know. What was it? Tube of coconut butter, which was a weird detail. So he kind of, they had like a sexual, how do you say it? Encounter. And then they moved on to how she found out, which was like basically on Facebook, where she hadn't been for a while, where, a friend pointed out that a photo of him was posted. And she was so clear about how devastating that was to find out. Also, it was just before COVID, so she didn't have the chance to meet the other women in person, and she must have been feeling very alone for quite a long time. And she was like, we can't repeat everything, but she said like what it comes down to is like to have sexual intercourse with someone without consent is basically rape. She said it out loud, and I think that is a good thing to do. He just did it. There was no reason for it. There's no excuse like others made up, like for it was like good for their intelligence position or for trust in the groups or whatever. He just did it because he could, and that kind of sums up the moral of this unit, the STS.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she talked about the way in which, were they all egging each other on. One of the details was that he couldn't remember her name in his written statement, and she wonders how many one-night stands of a similar type he had during his deployment. But we have no idea. She also talked about how that she was quite paranoid about people in her life now, but also people in her life in the past, and she's got like a mental short list of a number of people she wonders if they were undercover officers, but because of the huge like deficit in disclosure that we've had with the inquiry, she feels like she'll never know. And I mean, that I think that's something which a lot of people have said, is that this little bit of knowledge has given us like a glimpse, but it raises so many more questions about what else, who else, which I think came across very strongly. Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
It's hard to know where to start with this one. It's like, clearly he's pouring salt on the wound by saying he can't remember her, and it really came across as like, the lack of acknowledgement is cruel. And something that came out in a lot of the questions was like, Bea had children, he had children. There's just such a callousness going on, and like Jenny said, about feeling sorry for the wives. I think, and that was a fair point. It's like there are other people getting damaged in this because these, and it's mostly men, are just simply being cruel and getting, thinking they can get away with it, thinking that they're unaccountable. And this attitude comes across again and again, that they thought they could get away with it, that they could have all these affairs without consequence. And this is so important, why we have photographs, so that the public can at least see what these people are and what these abusers are doing on a state salary.
Yeah, I mean, there was. It was very clear from his written statement that he was only sorry that he got found out. And it was interesting. There's a real difference between his statement to Operation Hearn and the one he gave after Bea and Jenny had come forward. He contradicted himself quite blatantly there. It was obviously he wasn't expecting to get found out for it, and he intended to maintain the lie for as long as he could. It really makes you think about some of the other officers who we have heard evidence from during the course of the inquiry who won't be called back. And now, I mean, there was things maybe that we didn't find out about them in time before they appeared, and they've managed to get away with. There was before we got to that part, there was a lot of talk about how Trevor Morris, Bobby Lewis as he called himself when he was deployed, conducted himself as a larger-than-life character. He was very funny, that he was very well liked. I mean, this is all things which a lot of us, it was very similar to a lot of other undercover officers. Really reminded me of some things we used to think about Marco Jacobs, who infiltrated the group I was involved with. And again, those patterns of... one of the things that Jenny said was that she would have never believed it. Once she found out there was an undercover officer in their group, she would never believed in a million years that it was Trevor. If it was Bobby Lewis, Trevor Morris, because he was just so well liked. He was so sociable. He was seems such an open character, and this is something again which we're hearing other times.
And also how that impacted on her. How when you think you know somebody, even to the point that you will end up going to bed with them. To find out that you were misled has a massive impact on you psychological, and this is a story we hear time and time again. And Jenny really brought it home how devastating that was. And people, sometimes people go, "Oh, it's just one night, it's just 2 nights." There's no 1 night or 2 nights or a year or 2 years. It's you just don't. Every event does its own damage. And you can never downplay it. And when people downplay it, it's doing a disservice to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can't already tell anyway, I mean, it was incredibly emotional. And like all these things, they bring up so much. So I'm sure we've missed some detail. I'll do a Twitter Spaces this evening and kind of go through the rest of the evidence of the day, because there were some other bits and pieces in there which we're not touching on now, but deserve to be looked at. We'll be back again. There's no sitting tomorrow, which is unusual, and we're back in on Wednesday at 1 p.m. We'll be hearing the summary of evidence from the Lewis family, whose dead relative, Robert Lewis, was stolen by Trevor Morris for his deployment, and then we begin the 2.5 days of questioning of Trevor Morris, which hopefully a lot of this stuff's going to be put to him, and we'll get to hear him squirm a bit about it.